What stranger will you never forget? When I was in elementary school I fell through ice. A man who was walking his dog saw me fall and rushed to the shore. I frantically swam back to the shore. I was only about 5 meters into the pond, so it wasn't a long way, but it took some with soaked winter clothes. When I reached the shore, the man pulled me up by my jacket. It would have been difficult to get up, as there was a steep incline. I didn't thank him, because I was in shock, but I bet he knows I was grateful, and 20 years later I still hope I would have thanked him. I was doing tech support and my customer was so happy with my service she offered to marry me to her daughter. I politely declined. I was waiting for my appointment with an optometrist when an old Haitian man walked in with the grocery bags. The receptionist knew him, so he walked up to me and proceeded to ask me riddles. When I finally got the answer to one, he reached into his bag and gave me a Snickers then left. To this day I'm really curious as to what would motivate a man to become a wholesome riddler. The gentleman in a business suit handing me his umbrella in the middle of a downpour. We just were passing each other on the sidewalk. Our eyes met, and he just handed over the umbrella with a "here ya go." Never saw him ago. The foreign exchange student and his parents who walked past my park bench on campus and dropped his passport. I chased after them to return it, and his mom started screaming at me in broken English like, "Why you have his papers? Why you steal his papers?" While the kid and his father looked like they were going to die from embarrassment. I was on a tram, and I didn't have a ticket and the ticket inspectors came on. I got asked to have my ticket seen, and I said I couldn't find it on me, and he said hell come back, so I can look for it. There was a stranger sat on the seat behind me who had a ticket. He gave it to me, and he got off at the next stop. Guy gave me his ticket, so I wouldn't be issued a fine. An Irish guy, not in Ireland, who spoke with such a strong accent that I couldn't make out a single word. To this day I question whether it was just a prank. When my wife and I first started dating, we were walking into a Trader Joe's holding hands. This elderly woman looks at us and says rather loudly, "Cute couple alert!" Exclamation mark. My wife and I still laugh about it. It's been 12 years at least. I was at a pool bar at a resort in Jamaica. A British lady next to me asked me the most random question, which turned into a nearly 3-hour conversation. The question, "What is a redneck?" It was a lot more difficult to explain than I thought it would be. I didn't realize that was an unknown concept to a lot of Brits. When I was younger, I went grocery shopping with my dad. As we were walking, an old man stopped us and handed both me and my sister a shiny $1 coin. He told us that he wanted us to have them and to have a Merry Christmas. I never saw him again, but I think of that kind old man from time to time. I was driving down south with my girlfriend. We have a blowout, so I put on the donut. The donut blows out while we're exiting the very next exit. So there we are, maybe 19 and at least 100 miles from anyone we know, at a gas station in the middle of nowhere. Him thinking on what to do next, and probably looked like there was something wrong, so this older man offered to help. He drives me 20 or so minutes to a junkyard to get a cheap tire. Then he puts the tires on the rim with no more than a pry bar and some soapy water. Had a compressor on his truck, so he aired it up, and I put it on, and we went on our way. I was fiddling with my camera on a train platform in Melbourne, Australia, trying to take an artsy shot of the trains or something. I noticed through my viewfinder a guy about my age, early 20s or so at the time, full on flipping me off on the train on the opposite platform. I lowered my camera, laughing, and flipped him off back. He laughed. The train started to pull away, and I waved, and he waved back. Australia. The lady who told me I looked great in blue, and that it was clearly my color. To this day, if I'm deciding between shirts to buy or wear, I'll go with blue. That compliment was about 15 years ago at least. I was drunk on my front porch one night. Me and a couple of friends were shooting the shit. I lived in a rough neighborhood at the time. Lot of homeless people, but most of them were decent people just down on their luck. Anyway, I see a homeless guy walking by my house and I holler out to him, "Yo man, you want a beer?" And has like, "Man, hell yeah. Thank you." So he comes up into the yard, I give him a beer and an extra one for the road. He starts going on about how he misses his son and how he never gets to see him anymore. We all sit and listen to him. He starts crying and says he bought his kid a bag of brand new Hanes socks and his mom won't let him have them. Now I don't know what he did to deserve such treatment. Maybe he's a total son of a bitch and deserves to be where he is. Maybe not. I have no idea, but what I do know is, whatever his past, he was having a very human moment at the time and he was super thankful, not just for the beer, but that me and my friends were listening and talking with him, just letting him vent. Then he tries to give me the pack of socks he bought for his kid, which I vehemently refused. I was like, man, you keep them. Your feet might get cold out there. But he wasn't hearing it. I mean, he refused to keep them. He flat out insisted that I take them. Eventually it became obvious he wasn't gonna take no for an answer and he wore me down, and I accepted them. I guess he didn't need the reminder. He moved on and the party vibe was completely gone. We all just went inside and crashed. When I was super overweight, I was just starting to work out somewhat regularly. Being morbidly obese at the gym is terrible. I have never felt more eyes on me before in my life. I was on a treadmill, grinding out some inclined walk like jogging, and a super fit girl got on the machine next to me. This was all pre-COVID. She did a short warm up, and before she got off the treadmill she turned to me and gave me a high five and told me to keep it up. It was so encouraging to have that support when I was used to getting stared at by everyone else in the gym. Her small, kind gesture went a long way. There are a few. The biggest one was when I was homeless and asked a lady for the time. She told me and asked if I wanted to share her sandwich in the paper. She was the first person to treat me like a person, like I was worth something in years. I never got her name, but I will remember her fondly for the rest of my life. I know that she'll never, ever know what a difference she made in my life. Just that one simple thing she did and the humanity she showed me changed my life. I got sober just a few days later and completely turned my life around. One person, one smile, one kindness that you may never think of again in your life can change someone else's life beyond measure. My lost wallet was returned in the mail. The anonymous stranger sent it back at their own expense. $9.75 postage with all the money, credit cards, driver's license, and other items intact. Nothing was missing. A note enclosed read, "Please do something kind for a stranger whenever you have the opportunity." I volunteer at a suicide hotline. Some guy, Bob, called in and we started talking about his home situation. Nothing absolutely horrendous, but he felt trapped and stressed and felt like he didn't have options. When people use language like that, our training says we should ask if they are thinking of suicide. Many volunteers have trouble with this, but if you mention suicide to someone who is not suicidal, it doesn't make them more suicidal. They just correct you and say no. I feel more like this. So I asked Bob, you're using a lot of language that people use when they are thinking of suicide. Are you thinking of suicide? There was a pause, and then a huge wail. I could hear so much pain in his voice. I listened to him cry for at least 5 minutes. I've talked to people who had suicidal ideation before. It would be better if I were dead kind of thinking, but with no plan. Bob said yes, he was considering suicide, and we talked it out a bit more. After the pause and wail, that was the most concerned I've ever been for a human being outside my family. This wasn't just talking. I felt like he had already made up his mind about it, which was so scary. I only know what he told me. I know he was in his car parked somewhere. I know we got a few short laughs out of each other, and we made some plans for him. Plans are important because it gives you a sense that if he has something to do, to plan for, he can't commit suicide. Anyway, he truly is a stranger. I don't know his real name or what he looks like. I just know his story, and I know that he was in immense pain that day. He had a particular kind of accent, and whenever I meet someone with that same accent, I think of him and hope he's okay. In college, I was dating a girl. I really loved her, but I realized that we were incompatible and we had to break up. So I downed a handle of vodka by myself in my dorm. I was drunk as duck. but still feeling shitty. So I decided to head to the bars and drink some more. I actually don't remember if I made it there or not, but I remember getting off the bus from having come from the bars and was too wasted to continue the relatively short walk to my dorm. I decided to just lay down where I was at, which was quite literally the gutter next to the railing. Luckily it was an empty gutter, but a gutter nonetheless. This complete bro dude comes by and sees me laying in the gutter and helps me up. He helps me walk back to my dorm, and on the struggle there he asks me what's wrong. I explained the situation. I don't remember much of anything from the conversation, but I do remember him saying something to the effect of, "Bro, your problems aren't gonna be solved at the bottom of a bottle." When I was a broke-ass 18-year-old trying to make ends meet, I had a side hustle providing its support for households, like a Geek Squad sort of thing. In practice, I would mostly set up computers for elderly people and the tech illiterate, and teach them how to use them, or get them out of technical binds, usually with printers, by googling on their behalf. This elderly Korean gentleman hired me to set up his new computer for him. I spent an hour setting it up and teaching him how to use it, and 2 more hours eating a wonderful lunch with the man and his wife. He wouldn't accept my invoice for just the first hour. Instead, he paid me 3x my hourly rate for all 3 hours and asked me to come back to train him the next week. Over the course of about a month I came back 4 times, worked with him, had a lovely meal, and he would tell me about his family and his kids. He was so proud of his daughter, who was about to finish her residency and become a pediatrician. By the end of the month he was pretty comfortable on the PC, and I thanked him profusely for how kind he was and how ridiculously he'd overpaid me. He told me I reminded him of his son, who was estranged for some reason I didn't press, and that he hoped somewhere out there somebody was being kind to his son and sharing a home-cooked meal with him. I don't know why, but more than 10 years later I can't think of that guy without tearing up. I hope everything turned out well for him. Took a train to New York City by myself for the first time. I was 18. Second time to New York City. First time ever on a train. I told the kiosk lady that had never been on a train before and asked if she might give me a quick rundown of what to do. Another train station employee was nearby and was so interested and amused that I was taking a train for the first time and was alone. He walked me through what to do, down to the smallest detail. No judgment, no meanness. He was just a guy with a silly disposition, delighting in a young person's naivety, breaking up the doldrums of his week. I aspire to be that way when people ask me for help. Thanks, Frank P. You were a peach. I was in the university library with a really bad cold, super tired and wanting to go home but desperately studying for my upcoming exams really late at night. I thought I was alone, but a stranger came by my desk with an unopened pack of Strepsils. He then told me my health was the most important thing I would have on this earth, and walked away before I could process what had just happened. I wanted to thank him for his kindness, but I never saw him again. I went on an absolutely wild ride for my 21st birthday. I was totally blasted by the end of the night with barely an understanding of what my name was, much less how old I was. Anyways, on our way home, me and my big group of friends rented a limo for the night. No drunk driving here. I had to take a piss, but it was late and nowhere was open. So the driver stopped in a mall parking lot and I just relieved myself in by a light post. It wasn't until the next morning that I realized I couldn't find my phone. I had no idea what happened to it, but my girlfriend got a call later that day from my number. Turns out one of the street cleaner / maintenance guys for the mall had found my phone, and it was his daughter calling to say they had found it, as her father didn't speak English. I explained the situation and offered to come pick it up, but she said it was fine and they would mail it. A few days later I received my phone in the mail with a happy birthday card. They could have just kept the phone and sold it, or he could have just turned it in somewhere like a homeless shelter or the mall's lost and found at the security office. But he didn't. He and his daughter took the time out of their day to go to the store, get a birthday card, pack it and my phone in an envelope, run out to the post office, and mail it to me. It's an act of kindness I'll never forget, especially considering I had just pissed all over the street he had to clean. My dad is a truck driver, At the time he was probably about 55 to 56. It was a long time ago, I can't remember, and we were waiting for a train to pass. So there was then this black guy that looked rather homeless, and he knocked on the glass of our truck, and he said something along the lines of, "Can I give you something for your grandson?" And pulls out this model freight train. My dad insisted on giving him $20, but the guy refused, saying, "I'm just trying to make people happy." I was by myself in a restaurant bathroom with my screaming newborn baby. As his cries intensified, I started to crumble, knowing that we somehow had to walk all the way through the massive restaurant as the bathroom was tucked away in the back. A woman close to my age walked in. I apologized for the crying, and she immediately smiled and responded with, "Don't even worry about it." On her way out, she walked up to me and my baby and asked if this was my first. I responded with yes. She was not a mom herself, but immediately became empathetic to my situation. After a few minutes of conversation, I told her that I was nervous about walking my crying baby through the busy restaurant. She looked at me and said, "Let's get you out of here." She then opened the door and walked behind me, softly rooting me on all the way back to my table. She had no idea how much I needed her in that moment, and am forever grateful. Please subscribe and leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more of Reddit Universe.